All right. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Bodenheimer, and I am very excited today to have with me Carrie Schmidt. Did I say the right or is it Carrie L?
You got it, Carrie Schmidt.
Okay. So thank you, first of all, for taking time to join us. We had on my end some scheduling conflicts. So I appreciate you being flexible and to work with me. And then today, I told you I'm just got back from Disney. I'm
Yeah.
broke. I'm tired. I went and picked up my dog, so I've got like that dog allergies all over me. So I'm probably gonna be doing a lot of this
Oh
throughout.
gosh. You're a
Yeah,
trooper, Trip. You're a
it's not gonna
trooper.
it's not gonna look good on YouTube. We're gonna be sitting here doing the episode, but no, this is awesome. I appreciate you joining us today.
I'm excited to be on your show. We've been like getting to it. Actually, we had somebody connect us from another podcast I
Yeah,
was on. So, yeah,
yeah.
good
Kudos
stuff.
to Nathan Coy for that. And yeah, before we get going, let me read your accolades here. At the
Ooh.
back of your book. So, Carrie is a certified life mastery consultant, executive leadership coach, and CEO of Infinite Solutions. She is on a mission to transform lives by raising human consciousness and mental health awareness. And she lets down the walls by sharing her own story of transforming from a struggling single mother to a highly successful corporate executive. And I mean, first of all, check out her book right here. My hand's blocking it behind the screen. We'll have a link for it in the episode description. I read the book, very good book. I told her the thing that I liked most about it was she has these, which we'll talk about, the 7-step lifetime timeline system of transformation, which she breaks down. And she also talks about her story, but it's a healthy balance. So it's not like she throws the 7 steps at you and then the stories at the end or vice versa. It kind of leaves you wondering. Like you'll read and then you'll kind of go into the science of it a little bit. And then it's like, well, what happened with such and such? Next chat. It's like just be patient. It's coming up. So I
Yeah.
started to pick that up throughout the book. I was like, okay, be patient. I'll find out what happens to this person. But no, it was very good read. I really enjoyed it. You also had a 2190 rule
Yep.
uh, with habits, and so that was a very good piece as well. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, we have to go through the fearful five questions.
Uh-oh.
And first one for you: what is a fear that you have?
Drowning or being suffocated.
Really?
Like yeah, I don't know why. Like I would never, if I ever die, please, whoever, my mom or somebody, put me in a cremate me and throw me in the ocean. I would never want to be in a coffin.
Yeah.
That just is terrible. So yeah,
Okay. All right.
interesting.
And job for a day, any job, what would it be?
A job for the day. Something that would allow me to travel the world and see new places. So maybe be like a tour guide in Santorini, Greece.
Very specific.
You
Have
have to be specific. It's the
yeah.
law of specificity.
Have you been to Santorini?
No, but that is a dream of mine. If I ever get married, I hope that I will go on my honeymoon in Santorini.
I, I'm just imagining because I've been to Santorini and we took like a cruise, so we took a little boat up to it, and you had to either get up there through like one of the little Skyliner lifts, or you took a donkey and rode the donkey up to the very
Oh,
top. And when we got there, my daughter and I walked up, and I just gotten some bad news from something at work. So I was a little bummed at first. And I walk over there, and they bring the smallest of all the donkeys. This poor thing was the runt. And I was about to pick my daughter up and put her on there. And the guy was like, no, 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 this is for you. And he puts me on this donkey, and just that donkey and I were not made to go together. He kept bumping into the wall. Like I swear he was trying to just jump off this cliff.
you
But
off?
yeah, but it was just a miserable start there. But I was just imagining you for some reason running the little donkey thing,
I
allowing
would
people to do it.
totally love to ride the donkey.
Oh yeah, no, it's beautiful there. All right, let me ask you this because I had this
Uh-huh.
conversation with someone recently. What's a job you would not want to have?
To be like a janitor.
Janitor somewhere?
cleaning toilets or
Clean,
something.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Ooh, and another one I couldn't be like a nurse.
Really?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I was talking to a friend of mine about something about hospitals, and I was like, I could never work in a hospital. I just, mm-mm.
Why is that?
I'm a germaphobe. I
Oh, okay.
really
Well, that'll
am.
do
Like
it.
I stay away from germs, and I have like good mindset, so it doesn't even exist in my brain.
Okay.
So just keep me away.
All right. So no hospital, no toilets.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the interesting fact about you that even people closest to you probably don't know?
Um, sugar snaps. I don't know. I guess I'll say that. I hate it. I sold drugs when I was in college.
You talk about that in your book, though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't
Yeah.
talk about it out loud.
Okay. There. Hey, you said it. There you go.
Okay, so I said it. So
It's
look, my face is even red a little bit.
it's prepping you for the audiobook. It's
All
prepping you for
right.
the audiobook.
Okay.
All right. And book or podcast recommendation outside of yours, because we're going to talk about that one.
Book, I will always go with The Power of Intention by
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Wayne Dyer. It was the first book I read that was a personal development book, and it changed my life. And I'm infinitely grateful to Dr. Wayne Dyer for all of the words of wisdom that he's sprinkled upon so many people. And that's a book I would recommend to every person to read.
Okay. And we'll have that on our resource recommendations on the website. And
Cool.
final question for you: dinner for three with three historical figures who are no longer with us.
Oh, geez. Um, Dr. Wayne Dyer
Okay.
and Um, man, I don't know.
Any
Come on, Carrie,
actors,
please.
musicians?
Um, uh, give me a minute. I'll come back to it. I
Okay.
can't. I just can't think
We'll
right
come
now.
back to that at the end. I'm going to make
Okay.
a note.
Okay.
All right. And now let's, usually I say you survived the fearful five. We're going to come back. We're in a timeout for one of them, but
I got 4.5.
you got four. Well, actually, you answered five because I did ask you a two-part one for the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, dang it. So who would I love to have dinner with who's no longer here?
You got actors, you got political figures. Jesus gets invited to like all these dinners.
Okay. I would select uh is Mahatma Gandhi or what's his name?
Gandhi.
Yeah.
I was like, you're either going Muhammad Ali or Gandhi. So
Gandhi. Gandhi's
we'll go with Gandhi, okay,
okay, there we go.
and we'll go with Muhammad Ali. That'll be your third. All right,
Oh, you said three. Shoot, I couldn't even do two. Okay. All right, good. That's good.
yeah, we'll go with that. With that, that's an interesting three. Well, you survived the fearful five questions. Now the easy part. Now we're going to talk about you.
Okay, that's
So
better.
now you have usually it's funny because when I was prepping for this one, usually when I talk about someone's upbringings, I usually don't know much about it, and I like to hear because our childhood does shape who we are a lot,
Yes.
whether people like to admit it or not. It does, and so usually I kind of gloss over people's upbringings. I kind of get a little bit here and there, and but I really focus on stuff that they've done post college. So for
Mhm.
yours, it's actually going to be a little bit reverse because you had such a crazy story. Just, I mean, you kind of tipped us off to a little bit of it there with the one of the questions we were talking about, interesting fact. But talk to us, kind of lay the foundation for what your family dynamics were up until about the age of 8.
Okay. I remember my parents fighting. More so, I remember my dad yelling a lot
Mm.
at my mom and slamming doors. Um, so I would say from about 6 to 8 years old. I have an older sister. She's 8 years older than me. So she was 16 when I was 8. But my parents fought a lot, and that's all I really remember, which is
Yeah.
really sad.
What did they
My
do?
sister actually my sister actually used to tell me to go in her room and turn up the radio, and I would listen to like Kiss and Ozzy Osbourne and Poison. And but I would lay in her bed and I'd cry while I
Yeah.
was sitting there, like, because she told me to turn up the radio so I wouldn't hear my dad yelling at my mom. Um, so
Where'd y'all live?
we lived in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, which is an hour north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I
Is-
am a Steelers fan and I bleed black and gold, even though we're not very good this year, but we're rebuilding. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a little problem with the Steelers as I'm a Cardinals fan, and that Super Bowl still hurts about.
Everybody says that. It doesn't matter if you're Cardinals or any, everybody always says, "Oh, I have a problem with Steelers because we got beat by them." Well, I'm sorry.
It's not how you make friends on this podcast.
Chalk it up, man.
Oh, this is about
It's
her.
okay. Breathe.
She's a guest. She's a guest on here. Okay. She doesn't mean that. All right. We're back. So you grew up as a Steelers fan in Pennsylvania, but what
Yep.
did your dad do? What did your mom do?
So my dad was a baker, and he worked like a night turn. Like he'd go into work at like 4 a.m. or something and get home around 1. My mom was a stay-at-home mom up until my parents got divorced. And I
Mhm.
think that's why they fought, is because my mom wanted to go out and get a job. And my dad didn't really want her to, or maybe he just was jealous. I'm not sure. But um,
Yeah. Do you think there was more of like because I know the mindset in the 80s, to add some context to it, was that, women are supposed to stay at home, the men are the breadwinners. But I was doing some research for this, and it was showing that in the 80s there was kind of a boom of women wanting to work and enter
right.
the workforce, and it was creating some issues in the household, believe it or not.
Yeah.
To where men, it must have been an ego thing, but we're like, whoa, 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 no. I don't know if it was perception of how people, friends would view and stuff. But what do you think it was? Do you think it was that?
I mean, I think it was the culture back then, and the lifestyle is women stayed at home with the kids and the fathers went out and worked. But my dad, you don't make much money being a baker. So my sister and I grew up poor. I never had money. And he used to get mad that she would wear skirts to work, and then he would accuse her of cheating or something. And that, I think that's where all the yelling started and the
Yeah.
fighting. um so it's sad. It's sad, for kids who have to go through that, the parents getting divorced or the fighting. And unfortunately it's so common nowadays, and kids really do suffer from that, and it can have long-term effects. And that's why I bring it up, and that's why I share this story in the book, because I was 8 years old and I
Yeah.
was in the middle of this fighting, and I felt insecure, like unstable and just scared. Like a lot of times I felt scared because when my dad yelled, his voice was so loud, it scared me,
Hmm.
so I kind of was young and already in the fight or flight, the flight. I would just want to run away and hide.
Yeah. That amygdala was
Yep.
firing. Okay. And what was your relationship with your sister, Kim, right?
My sister, so she was 8 years older than me, and I used to hang out with her friends. So she actually taught me how to drive a stick shift geo tracker when I was like 9 years old, I
Nice.
think.
Nine.
And
Okay. There's people now in their
nine,
40s I know that can't do that.
yeah. Well, I can't drive a stick shift now, but I could when I was
Okay.
before I was
Not how that's
legally
supposed to
able to
work, but
drive.
okay.
And she would have parties and stuff, so I'd be there drinking with her friends, way too young. So I grew up really fast,
Yeah.
before it was probably my time, if
Mhm.
you will.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate too, that happens a lot because we were talking before you hit record. I think I was 11 whenever I had to grow up. You were
Mm-hmm.
8 pretty much when you had to grow up, and just what that does to someone. I mean, it's tough because I think about it a lot. I'm like, what if I just would have had a regular childhood and was doing what I was
Yeah.
supposed to do and have zero struggles in the world? But I remember being 11 years old and learning how to pay bills and sit down learning how to budget groceries with my mom. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what in the world am I doing? I'm supposed to be in my room watching TV and
Right.
playing with toys. Um,
But I feel like, things happen for a reason. And
mhm.
whatever the season, whatever the reason is, I think now maybe God prepared me to be strong and have a bigger voice and be able to speak up so that I can maybe help other people who are going through what I went through when I was younger. You know, you just never know. So it's all about the silver lining. Try to look at,
Yeah,
what are the good things, and that's what I try to write about in the book, because I feel like I'm negative Nancy at the very beginning, talking about all the darkness and the pain,
but it
and
sets
it's
the
like,
stage.
okay, we'll flip the script and let's look at some of the positive things. And I think in our humanness as humans, we are wired to always remember the negative
Yeah,
versus kind of shining the light on some of the positive things that we did gain from those experiences. So I gained a lot of insight about life, and by going through some of the stuff that I went through before I was even 14 years old.
yeah, yeah. And kind of to jump ahead a little bit, focusing on your mom. You right now you have a great relationship with your mom, correct?
Yes, I mean it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Because at the beginning, I don't want to spoil too much for people because you got
Hmm.
to go out and buy the book. But
Yeah.
in there, you talk about your relationship with your mom and how, um, everybody was kind of painting her as the bad guy when a
Hmm.
lot of this stuff was going on, and how she was lacking that individuality. You were talking about how she would date someone and it totally adapt and change to what they liked, and almost to where it was you didn't even know who she was. How did
Hmm.
you end up kind of burying the hatchet and, okay, hey, let's bygones be bygones, let's move on? Where was that moment for the two of you?
I think it's still ongoing. I think it
Yeah,
is, it's when you have a certain way of thinking or feeling that is
yeah,
ingrained in your subconscious program. So I actually I overcame a lot of some of the issues that I've had in writing the book, and in expanding my awareness to my way of thinking about situations, like going back into my past and uncovering how I thought, how I felt back then, how it makes me feel now. So it's a process, but I had a lot of resentment that I talk about towards my mom, but I actually think that it's a reflection of my own internal belief systems and my own way that I look at the world. And when I talk about the screen is your lens of life. So it's almost like holographic. So what we perceive, we receive, and we believe. It's like it's a mirror. So my
mm-hmm.
mom is a mirror of me. So when I see things that she does, it makes me mad, but I think it makes me even more triggered because I might do those things too and I don't want to. So it's raising your level of awareness to begin to discern of why am I reacting in a negative way towards my mom because she does something, and how can I overcome that so that we can have a healthier relationship. And it's still daily work.
Mm-hmm.
It's still ongoing. I love my mom. I love her so much, and I'm so grateful that she has been there for me and my son. I have had no one else who has been there, but my mom has been there for me and my son. My son's now 15 years old, so I'm so grateful to
Yeah.
her, and I love her so much.
Why is that when people are like, oh, you're just like your mother, or if you see things, because my daughter does it. She did some things this weekend and my wife was like, oh, you're just like your father with that, and she was like, no, I'm not, like very defensive
Mm-hmm.
uh, about it. But it's funny how that works. But yeah, you talked about her and some of the issues that had happened with you and her and her and your father, and also with your sister.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of, I mean, it's typical stuff. Teenagers trying to figure out who they are, therefore they bully and pick on others.
Yeah.
You were kind of the sacrificial lamb. You were 8 years younger than your
Yeah.
sister, so you got picked on a lot. But you mentioned that it created a lot of insecurities with you.
Yep.
How have those carried over to where you are today? And then second part of that question is, what is your relationship like with her now as well?
My sister and I, we talk, but we're not as close as we were when we were younger. Um, I really try to stay positive and keep positive energy around me. And
Yeah.
my sister sometimes can be negative, and that's just some people, look at the difficult side of life, and some people try not to. I try
Hmm.
not to. I try to look at the bright side of life, and um I try not to dwell in that, but in my mind I do dwell in it.
Yeah.
So I might not dwell in it, verbally to other people all the time, but I'm very analytical in my own mind. And I've had to do a lot of work to overcome my own limiting beliefs, negative self-talk. And it's it's a daily activity. You have to develop the habit of overriding those ways of thinking and feeling, but then identifying if it does come up and repatterning and reprogramming. Like, even just if I say, oh, I'm such a dumb, you know, and then I'll say cancel, because that's actually the Silva method that I've learned to kind
Hmm.
of repattern, reprogram. Cancel. I'm basically telling my subconscious, no, that's not okay. I'm amazing. I'm great.
Yeah.
And you have to say those good things about yourself. So it's a continuous effort, ongoing. When you talk about personal development, personal transformation, people think there's a magic switch. There's not a magic switch. It takes time to overcome faulty programs from your past ways of thinking, and implement new healthy habits and new ways of thinking. And it's something that you have to do every single day, but it gets easier and life gets better when you start to incorporate these practices into your life, which I've been doing. It took me 4 years to write this book, and I really went deep. Like, I told so many stories about my personal life that I kept, behind the screen. I didn't share with a lot of people, but the reason why I share is because I feel like we need to break down those walls. We need to be more vulnerable and open up, get past the egoic lens, the egoic mindset, and connect more to our spiritual side, and, go forth with love if at all possible. Love is the answer. So I try to do that every single day if I possibly can.
That's awesome you say that. And then what you were talking about a few moments ago about just talking to yourself with things, because I've said it several times on the podcast. We work on our physique and we're like, yeah, we want everybody to see it. We go out and have dinner with friends on a Friday, Saturday night. We want everyone in our social media world to see it.
Mm-hmm.
When we meditate, when we read a book, when we have a cup of coffee we like, when we focus on that spiritual side, we want everyone to see that. But from our emotional standpoint, we don't even want to look at it ourselves, much less
Right.
tell people that, which is weird. Out of those four, that's the one that uh, it takes some people in their entire life don't even focus on what's under their own hood. And
Yes.
so I think your book is great at really, like you said, looking behind that screen and, not just focusing on curls and chugging down some cold ones. It with some friends, it focuses on, all right, let me understand how I tick the way I tick.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I have that baggage from my relationship with my mom growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like you. I love her to death. I love her so much. I don't know where I would be without her. But I have her temper. I have, and it's something that I didn't address until probably about 10 years ago. So even
Mm-hmm.
this week at Disney, they have this new virtual thing where you have to sign up for a park on a certain day.
Okay.
Took my family to the wrong park, and I'm
Oh,
very meticulous with my schedule. So we get to the park, scan the ticket. They're like, no, you got to go to another park. Now I know in my head that other park lines are forming, getting longer.
Mm-hmm.
I got here early. I was very irked when I was walking back to the car, but I was
Yep.
mad at me. And instead of just being like, all right, drop it, it's over with,
Mm-hmm.
I was visibly upset at myself.
Mm-hmm.
And to where my wife and daughter were both like, calm down, stop.
Yep.
Um, and I did a lot of soul searching. And 10 years ago, I would have flipped out. Um, but yeah, it's really important to do that. So that's one thing that really stands out to me about your book is that you really tackle that piece. And you talked about it took you 4 years to write it. How therapeutic was that to sit down and actually put all of these words onto paper? Because you do talk about journaling in the book too, which I think is a
Yeah.
great tip.
Well, I remember when I was writing, and I even documented in the book, it was like 8/21, 2020 or something. And I Googled the number and it was like an angel number. And it was actually when I was writing about when my son was born
Yeah.
and trying to leave his father because it was a very emotionally abusive relationship. And I was scared to raise a child on my own. And so when I was writing that, like I started to emotionally feel things that I hadn't felt because I hadn't went back there. So that's why, in this system of transformation, in talking about the steps is identifying your unconscious behavior patterns, self-sabotaging habits. You have to identify them, but then you have to go back into your past and figure out, well, why do I have this program, this way
Yeah.
of thinking or behaving anyway? And so you have to go back, but then when you do that, you elicit emotions, and this is it. So, and I think that we need to start teaching more emotional intelligence and how to regulate our emotions starting in childhood. It should be like a regular curriculum in elementary, middle, and high school, how to deal with our emotions, because our brain um, doesn't our emotions happen faster than our brain can cognitively recognize. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like 2 seconds ahead of time. And so, if we're not trained to cognitively realize that I'm emotionally reacting, then we get into issues, right? Because we react, we have these triggers, and, whether it's yelling or fighting or running away or shutting down, whatever that emotional response is, it contributes to our results in life. And a lot of times it's negatively impacting our results, our relationships, our ability to create and foster healthy relationships, our ability to function at school or in a workplace and be successful. Because if we're constantly getting emotionally aroused and upset or sad or pissed off, our results are going to impact that. So, if we could learn more emotional intelligence and how to regulate our emotions younger, I think we would see such a different world, a different way of interacting in the world. And that's where we're losing sight. And I think we need to come back to that. We got to work on the inner stuff, our thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm. So many people out there are emotionally, it's not a derogatory thing, but emotionally clueless because they've
Mm-hmm.
just never been taught.
Right.
Yeah, only know how to react to what they've seen and experienced in their past. And speaking of their past, tell our listeners about your relationship that you had with your father from pretty much from the divorce all the way until him passing.
Yeah, so when my parents got divorced, I went back and forth every other weekend, to my dad's and my mom's, and until my dad he found a new girlfriend, and we just kind of weren't as close anymore. His girlfriend didn't like kids. So I really hung out with my sister more than my mom or dad. And when I was 13, I went into high school because our junior, senior high was in one building. And I was trying to fit in with a new group of friends. And the group of girls that I was hanging out with were seeing uh, guys from a different color, race.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up falling in love with one of the guys. And we dated for 9 years. It was an interracial relationship. My father and my sister were very prejudiced, and that was not okay to them. And I was really scared for them to find out. When they did find out, they disowned me. So I didn't have a relationship with my father when I was 14 until into my 20s, really. Um, we might see each other for like Christmas or something later on, but for a long time, he didn't talk to me. My grandma, my aunts and uncles, like they just all disowned me. And so here I am, a teenage girl trying to get by, and without a family and really feeling shameful and just it wasn't good. It wasn't a good place to be. But I made my friends became my family. My friends' family became my family. And that's kind of how it's always been for me. And I talk about in the book, being labeled as a misfit. And, I'm not the person that goes with the herd.
Yeah.
Okay. So if somebody says, "Well, don't hang out with this person because of the color of their skin." I'm going to be like, "Well, you're crazy and I don't see that. So, sorry." Just like even in my career, I don't do things that don't make sense. I'll go the other way. And I'm okay doing that.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book, broken family equals misfit. Interracial relationship equals misfit. Drug and alcohol abuse equals misfit. Single mother equals misfit. And you were talking about that relationship that you were in, and there was something you said early in the book that later on, the more you were talking about that relationship, there were several times where there was flags like this may not be the best relationship,
Yeah.
but you were like, no, I'm in love. And this is something that I have seen personally in my life, uh, with you name it. I've been surrounded by girls, whether it's in my household or personally,
Mhm.
that I've seen do this, who are good friends of mine. But you said that you uh, never let anyone get close enough to where you would pretty much cut it off the first sign. But yet, with this individual, you had that, uh, avoidant emotional. You have avoidant emotional attachment with most people, but with him, you just could not let that go. What do you think that was? Do you think you were trying to fill a void?
Yeah, I think it was just because I didn't have a dad, and um I know this about myself. It's almost like I'm finding out it's codependency is what it
Yeah.
is. It's like you feel you need this person. They complete you. You need them to survive and be happy, and that's totally toxic. You should never be in a relationship where you feel you need somebody to complete you. And I think maybe it stemmed from, my family disowned me, so like here I am, I'm stuck with you anyway.
Broken
I don't
home.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I know that for 9 years, he repeatedly cheated on me. I fought with girls over him, and it was terrible, and I wish I had somebody to talk some sense into me
They had
back
scheduled
then.
fights.
Yeah.
It was like pay-per-view. And he said
Yeah,
he would sit
scheduled
there watch.
fights. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, fist fights in parking lots with it's just there's so many girls that go through this, and we need to be focusing on ourselves and loving ourselves and being complete and whole within ourselves. But because of our lack of having a stable foundation, a family, people that love us, a support
Experience.
system, yes, then we resort to filling those voids with people from the outside, and it's not healthy. And so then we're stuck in this rut of wanting and yearning and not really getting what we need, and then that just continues, and it'll repeat itself in relationships later down the road. So even though I got out of one unhealthy relationship, I got right back into another unhealthy relationship. So we're just repeating the same stories over and over again. And I started to notice this more when I became a life coach and I started to work with my clients. And then, I would ask them, questions, and they would go right back to childhood, and they would be able to tell me exactly, I was 6 years old, my dad wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. And so it all just made complete sense. And that's when I started to develop the system of transformation, because I saw how people's brains went from talking about this experience, and then when I asked them to go back and remember the first time they encountered it, they could tell me the explicit details of the story of where the faulty programming came into play, but they're unconscious of it, so then they're just repeating the same relationship patterns. And until you heal that trauma and you fill the void within you, it'll continue to repeat itself. And that's to me where we need to wake up. And
Yeah.
that's where we need to raise our level of consciousness to understand that nothing on the outside is ever going to fill a void within me. I have to do the inner work. And I'm still doing the inner work. And I'm helping other people do the inner work. And that is just enlightening to me when you can overcome this stuff and you can start to write new stories. Like, I'm in a relationship now, my boyfriend and I are madly in love. You know, I talk about I manifested him. I believe he is my soulmate. I believe that we are going to spend the rest of our lives together, but we both have unconscious behavior patterns that we have to work through, and the
Mhm.
beautiful thing is we're working through them together,
Yes. Yeah.
and we're able to communicate and understand and reflect. um and now our subconscious, like, the defense mechanisms kick in. Mine is just, I leave me alone, lose my phone number, I'm done.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually just did that Friday night with him. And so the system is real, but you have to continue to do the work. You have to identify each time that trigger or that unconscious behavior pattern kicks in, and you have to go back and realize that I shouldn't have reacted this way. How can I start to develop new healthy habits and reprogram that way of thinking so I'm not pushing people away?
There's so much to unpack from what you just said right there. Because first you were talking about even working with clients about the tag it, remember it, feel it, the part of the 7 steps that you talk about. But I think you said something key there about the relationship you have with your boyfriend is y'all are both working on things on your ends.
Hmm.
And I think when you really look, this is just me, and I'm about 4 years away from my doctorate degree. But
Hmm.
when you look at a lot of relationships, for one, we're not willing to admit on both sides what we do wrong. We
Yeah.
tend to push the blame onto someone else.
Hmm.
And even in my relationships, it wasn't until my wife and I are very good at being accountability partners for each other in terms of you don't need to do that. You need to, but you really have to work on how you address it to the other one because it could trigger them as well.
Yes.
So it really does stem back to knowing their story, knowing where they came from. Even some of the relationships you talked about in your book, it was, hey, I think I know why this person was the way they were because of how they grew up. But
Yeah.
yeah, but understanding them, holding them accountable, I think that is key. And I've seen with a lot of people who have really successful relationships, especially since I've been working with emotional intelligence, it is they both hold each other accountable.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing to, yeah, I know I do this, but now you got a partner right there to kind of say it to you as well.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned the issues you had with drugs and alcohol, and you were like, I've written it, I haven't talked about it, but talk to us about like how you started to kind of go down that hole, and then you said you had a like a linchpin moment for you was Christmas Day 2005. So talk to us about your journey on getting started with this bad habit and then being able to kick it.
Yeah. It was really when I was in college. Again, my family was poor. I didn't have a lot of money, and I used to work 2 to 3 jobs to put myself through college. I went to college full time. I worked full time as a waitress. I was a bartender. And then it's really the group of people you hang around, right? So I started hanging around a group of people who were doing drugs, and you know, um, people who sold drugs. And so I said, oh, well, let me try to make some money. And it's easy money and you can make a lot of money real quick, and it's, it just is what it is. So I went down that path. It was a very unhealthy path. I don't recommend that to anybody. And I say that if I didn't have my son, I would have ended up in jail or dead. I believe that, really, the path that I was on. And it was that Christmas day where, I handed somebody a lot of money to go get something and they never came back.
$600.
$600.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was Christmas Day. It was terrible. It was just, I would classify that as being my rock bottom in life, of just not a good place to be. And I had to find a way out of that. And it there's always the catalyst. I study a lot of quantum physics and just energy work, and there always has
Hmm.
to be a catalyst to change, right? And unfortunately, it's either the birth, an introduction of something, or death, disease, divorce, whatever. I call it the 3Ds.
Yeah.
But some type of catalyst has to be introduced to change. Either you do get in trouble, or you get into an accident, or you almost die, or you almost overdose, or whatever it is, you lose somebody. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I know I need to make a change. And for me, it was, I found out I was pregnant, and I immediately stopped smoking cigarettes and doing whatever else I was doing. I stopped, because I now had a child inside of me, and it wasn't just about me anymore.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't care about myself. I did not care about myself. So that's why I was doing what I was doing. I didn't care if I died, because I had no feeling of love or happiness. It was just partying and having fun with my friends. I didn't have a purpose. So, and there's so many people out there that are on that path. And if I can just reach one person through my stories, or in just explaining that God, life can get so much better when you wake up from the darkness. And there's usually always some type of light, trying to get your attention, and it's like you don't want to see it, or you ignore it. But try to pay attention to the light and seek it before you get to a really, really bad place.
Yeah. Speaking of the light, talk to us about the importance of your inspiration, your son.
Oh, my baby, my angel baby. Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. I mean, he's just amazing. I am so grateful that he's come into my life. He's taught me so much. He's helped me be a better person, to be honest. And he's 15 years old. He goes to the gym every single day. He's into weightlifting. He's into personal
Nice.
development, into good mindset.
Yeah.
He eats healthy. I mean, I'm so blessed.
Yeah. Has he read your book?
No.
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 Yeah.
I told him he's not allowed to read it until he's at least 18.
Yeah.
But I mean, he watches the podcast and he
Yeah.
hears things. So, we've talked about certain things. My son's never met his father, which is, to me, it's still a huge hole, even in me.
Yeah.
But that's just something I can't change. And I wished that I could, when he was younger, I'll meet somebody, blah, blah, blah. But, we all have our stories. We all have our struggles. And whatever the reason, you might not know a reason, but it's preparing us for something greater.
100%.
So it's looking at it from the perspective of, how can I use this to make me a better person, or make the world a better place?
Yeah. So I still remember June 23rd, 1993, like it was yesterday. I still remember it. I still remember July 9th, 1993. I remember everything with my father. I remember everything with my sister. And I still look at those moments. Those are the darkest moments, but I know they prepare me to something better, which is my daughter.
Yeah.
And so for you, when your son does, read your book or he hears more about your story, what's the biggest takeaway you want him to take away from all the struggle that you went through?
just to be a better person, and that you don't have to go down that path and you can choose other avenues. It's just, there's so much, it's really about being whole within you, you
Mm,
know, and just being honest and trying to follow love, God, just a higher power, good vibes, not low.
yeah.
Spirituality to me is so important. And I talk about that in the book too. Like, I was raised Catholic and I believe in God, I believe in a higher power. I just couldn't when people would say he, like a god in the sky, to me, I'm so logical, it just didn't make sense. But when I started to research like spirituality and the science that can prove spirituality to be true, in my opinion, then I was like, oh my gosh, now I need to teach, like, we need to teach this to everybody, because I just didn't get it logically. Some people don't, you have to, it's all in your perspective and your perception of something.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to relate to it. And I can relate to just the infinite intelligence that's everywhere present. I am that I am is what they were trying to show us. Jesus, Buddha, whatever, spiritual enlightened being that walked this planet and tried to show other people like us that we have God, we have the higher power within us. Wow. And when
Yeah.
you can connect with that power and you can be one with that power, you can just move mountains. There's so much that we are just unconscious of, the power that breathes us, that I believe we need to really tap into. And if we could tap into that, this world would be a better place, because we shouldn't have borders and classifications and judgment and racism and just all of the isms that keep us apart,
Yeah.
when we're all really just one and we come from one source. And just let down the walls and let's just be people. Like I say, if we were all standing around stark naked, what would you see, the beauty or the ugly?
Hmm.
And that is your screen, it is your lens of life. How you view the world is based upon how you view yourself and how the experiences of your past. But you can change your perception. You can wipe the screen clean. You can remove the faulty programs from your mind and really shift your way of living and being in the world. And that is my why I do what I do.
Yeah. And speaking of your book, you talk about the 7-step life timeline system of transformation. Where'd you come up with that? Is really good stuff. And you actually talk about it like hanging out the clothes, the rinse, repeat, and everything. Talk to us about kind of the genesis of coming up with that.
It was just really what I was doing with me. Like, I'm identifying my own unconscious behavior patterns. So I would say, I'm tagging it. I'm going to tag that. Okay, let me go back in my life timeline. It's from 0 until today, the present
Hmm.
moment. So I'm 40 years old. So I go back, and at 8 years old, I'm identifying that, I felt unstable in my home because my parents, fought so much. And so I inherited this fight or flight response, this nervous belly. I used to get belly aches all the time when I was little, and I was always nervous
Yeah.
and scared, And so, again, those are feelings that we're feeling, and the feelings are related to memories. And so later on in life, when you feel a certain way, it trigger, or when you think a certain way, it triggers that emotion. So you have to figure out where the program was installed at what point in time, so you can override it. Otherwise, it'll just continue, because our brains are like a supercomputer. The subconscious mind is powerful. And I didn't realize how powerful it was until I was an adult trying to override it.
Hmm.
So, I in doing the work on myself and then applying it to, working with my clients and seeing, where their thoughts and where their experiences and some of their issues were coming from, to me, it was like a clothesline. It's just like, holy crap, we got to go back. We got to hang it up, right? We got to feel the feelings from the past. We got to flip the screen because we walk through life with our blinders on and we don't always see it from someone else's perspective. So we need to, look at it from a different perspective or a silver lining. And then we have to release it. Energy is everything, right? So we carry energy with us in our biofield, and we're not taught about energy, vibration, and frequency. Man, that's the root of life. This is what our world is made out of. First in thought, then in form. Our thoughts create things, right? So you have to realize where this stuff comes from, but then you got to release it. And that's what most people were not trained to do. Instead, we suppress our emotions. We bottle them up, we drink them away, we numb the pain with whatever, if it's emotional eating, shopping, gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, we try to fill the void with something on the outside. And so then we suppress these emotions, but they don't go away. Yeah. They don't go away. They'll just continue to run in the background until something happens, you're triggered, and then your bad side comes out, the shadow, it comes out, and it's dark, and it's scary. So you got to do the work. But then once you release it, right, then you can reprogram your mind. And this is like the most powerful thing, because I've been doing this now for 10 years, ever since The Secret came out. I think it came out in 2008.
Okay.
I started doing the law of attraction and practicing this. And this is when I got on the self-improvement development journey. But then step 7, this is the key, and this is what everybody leaves out, is resonance. You have to put on the energy of that which you want to become now. Mm-hmm. Because we don't attract what we want. We attract who we are. And that's why we attract certain relationships to us, because we are the energy, right? So we attract like energy.
Yeah.
We're tuning forks in the universe. We tune to a certain channel or a certain group of people until we can shift our way of thinking and feeling. The feelings are emotions, energy and motion, or else they can be suppressed emotions, right? So you got to work with the energy, and you have to realize what energy you're giving off at any given point in time.
Yeah. I really like it. You mention it throughout, and you keep going back and giving examples too. So it's not like a lot of books where I've read where they give, either these are my 15 qualities or my 10 steps, and then they don't really talk about it. You keep referring back to it throughout, and you'll talk about a situation, and then you'll say, this is where I released it. This is where I tagged it. So that part I really enjoyed. And talk to us about the importance of mental health, because it's a word that we've heard a lot more of probably in the last 5 years than we probably had the past 40 years. Why do you think now? Because it was even a little bit before COVID. So a lot of people would think it just stems from COVID, kind of forced us to kind of look in the mirror a little bit more. Why do you think mental health is more out there now than ever before?
I mean, mental health is the most important health we have. What's going on in our mind is going to affect us in every way, shape, and form. It's going to affect our health. It's going to affect our relationships. It's going to affect our success in life. And we have all of these thoughts going on, and we have these issues that we're dealing with, but we don't talk about the issues. Right? That's the whole thing of behind the screen, is letting down the walls and talking about, I was put on depression medicine when I was 14 years old because I was crying and depressed all the time because my boyfriend cheated on me all the time and my parents disowned me, and I didn't have anybody that I felt loved me. Mm-hmm. Now, is that really a good reason to put me on depression medicine? Or should I maybe get some counseling and therapy to talk about what's going on so that I can make better choices in my life?
And that's how it was for years. Yeah.
It's still that way. I still think that, doctors, instead of dealing with the energy that's going on, the thoughts that are going on, the psychology, instead you get a pill.
Yeah. And then you're relying on it for 30 years.
Exactly. But you've never developed healthy habits
Mm-hmm.
because nobody taught you how to go back and shift your way of thinking and to see things from a different perspective, or to fill you up to tell you that you need to love yourself first before you give yourself away to other people.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, that we are in a mental health pandemic. Like, why do you think there's school shootings and all of the violence that's going on? Because people are in dark places, because they don't have people that love them. They don't have the support that they need. They don't have the help that they need to deal with the thoughts that are going on in their mind, causing them to act a certain way. This is where we need to really get better as, a Western culture, or as
Yeah.
people, and be able to support one another. And instead of judging, stop the judgment, stop the criticism. How can we help? How can we spread more love and light in the world?
Yeah. I like what you said earlier about bringing emotional intelligence into uh, grade school or teaching them at a younger age. And um, I think overall mental health has so much relevance, so much importance. And I think kids need it more so than adults because they're still trying to discover who in the world they are.
Yeah. And
Um,
in such a world that has so much uncertainty and so much judgment and so much violence and so much red tape, so much liability, like
so
there's
much in
just
front
so
of them.
much.
Yeah. And
There's way
social media
more.
doesn't help.
No, and social media is so much worse. Like, even my son will say I'm taking a break from it because I'm starting to compare myself to other people.
Yeah. My daughter is one of the most 14, most emotionally stable 14-year-olds I know, but even she'll get caught up in some stuff. And I'm like, why are you consuming yourself with that or letting that get
Yeah.
to you? It is not good, but it's easier said than done. But no, talk to us about this. Your book,
The
Behind the
book.
Screen. I'm telling you, this is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Thank you
Yeah.
for uh let me check out this copy. I told you I've marked several pages. If y'all are checking it out here on the YouTube channel, you can see I like to go through. I'm not a big highlighter as much as I have been in the past because I can highlight, can't find. So I start flipping these pages and I flipped a lot of them. And really good journey. And talk to us about what made you write this, the process. You mentioned it was a 4-year journey. And then where can they find a copy?
Yeah. So you can go to Amazon and you can get the copy on Amazon. There's a paperback and a hardback. There will be an Audible book, hopefully by the end of this year. That's my goal. Um, I enjoy writing, and I really started to do so much research in the scientific world, like neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and it really just enlightened me. And then I saw things from a different perspective. And I always felt like, I've been through these things for a reason. I have some crazy stories to tell. Some of them I didn't even put in the book.
Wow.
I'll make those bonuses. That'll be like the Audible bonus chapter when I
Yeah.
was carjacked in Memphis.
Oh yeah. That's
But
interesting. Yeah, but
hmm another show. So yeah, I've been through a lot, and for a woman, and even in my career, being in an all male dominated industry, being successful as a young woman, it's just I've been through a lot. So I've always felt this pull for more, like I'm meant for more. Like there's so much more to this. I need to like get out there. And I really like I said before COVID, if we ever get into a revolution, I'll lead the next revolution. I'm that type of person. Like, let's go. I will fight for what I believe in, and let's make the world a better place. That's really what I want to do. So I was like, I'm going to write this book. But the reason why I wrote the book, I remember because I started listening to Audible. I listened to Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. I fell in love with Gabrielle Bernstein, started watching her, and I'm like, I'm going to write a book. I literally made a note, I printed it out, and I pasted it on my wall at work, and I said, I, Carrie Schmidt, will become an author. I'm going to have a book by this date, whatever. And I don't give up on my dreams. So I continued and I didn't give up. And it's really scary to put my stuff out there and even talk about it. But it's meant for a bigger purpose. And
Yeah.
I will be interviewed by Oprah Winfrey.
I saw that in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, it will happen.
I can, I will, I am.
Yeah. Biggest thing you've learned about yourself from, we'll say that 8-year-old version of you to where you are today in 2022.
You can overcome anything. Where there is a will, there is a way. You connect to that will and just stay with it, there will be a way. No matter what, you can overcome anything, you can do anything. You just have to get past your own egoic illusions of our mind. And when you get past that and you connect to your spirit and your will within, you can do anything.
Your son has a family, they have kids, 3 generations down the line. When someone picks up a book and mentions your name, what do you want them to say about you?
She shined light in the world.
Let's keep it
And
simple. Yeah.
yeah, and helped people, find their power, passion, and purpose. It's really what I want to do. I just want to help people connect to their power, passion, and purpose and live a better life. You do not have to stay stuck in the darkness.
Yeah. I think the part that really stood out to me too about your book was it wasn't, as I said, just throwing concepts or anything like that at somebody. It was raw. It was, here's my story. This is what I went through. And I think it's got something for, parents out there listening to this. I'll go ahead and tell you my demographics. When it comes to up to 17-year-olds, I think my daughter is my viewer. But
Mhm.
outside of that, we take off 18 up to, the 50s or 60s. But so with that demographic, the large audience that listens to this, more than likely they have kids.
Mhm.
They are in broken homes. And
Yeah.
there's so much to learn from this, because how to handle those situations, how to handle it as a parent. You talk about how your parents went through it and some of the right ways of going about it and some of the really wrong ways, where you talk about the outline in the pantry.
Yeah.
And then there's also things about, how words and our actions can impact our children,
Mm.
acceptance of things they like that we may not necessarily agree with. And then also what to do when you're, how to maybe talk to someone who's in that relationship, because teenage relationships are real
Yeah.
and they're dangerous, because to them, that's their world. That is their entire world. They'll throw away everything for this guy on the soccer team that nobody else knows.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. And I've been there I was there so many times.
yeah. And
Like so many times.
it,
And it's one of the chapters. It's called the teenage screen.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it's so hard for parents to even have those conversations, but to read the stuff that you've been through, and everyone has addictions, everyone has issues, and just to see how you overcame all of that, it's just a really good book in terms of, it's very relatable, it's very
Thank
relatable.
you.
And
You're gonna make me cry.
yeah, and I think that's what really stood out to me. It wasn't, I went and picked up a book at, from a CEO of some Fortune 500 company, and the guy or girl had a tremendous life. This was, no, look, I'm bruised and battered, and now I'm still standing here today on top of the mountain. So kudos to you for taking the time to do it and to share your story and to be transparent and vulnerable, which I think is incredible. And folks, definitely go check it out. Like I said, one more time, got it right here in front of me behind the screen. We'll have a, with my ring light on the way. I'm not good at this YouTube thing.
No,
There we
you're
go.
good.
There
You're
we go.
fine.
But yeah, go check it out. We'll have the link in the episode description. What final comments do you have for our listeners?
Thank you so much. I mean, just guys, Trip actually read my book. I'm so grateful because so many people have not read my book yet. And I'm like, can you just read it? I just want your feedback, right? So thank you for taking the time to read it. Thank
Oh
you
yeah.
for, caring enough to share this. And thank you for everybody who's listened. And I just, I want to leave you with the fact that you can do anything you put your mind to. Where there's a will, there's a way. So just make it happen.
I know how it feels. I'll talk to my mom and she's like, I love your podcast. And she'll mention a guest. I'm like, Mom, I haven't released that episode yet.
Yeah.
So know exactly how it feels.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much, folks. Go check out her book. Stay tuned too, because I'm saying it here, she's gonna have a podcast.
I am going to have a podcast. It's called Behind the Screen. And the podcast, so if you're interested, reach out. My website's carrie-schmidt.com. Podcast will be out, and we're going to be talking about people's lives behind the screen, what others don't know about them, and what they've learned and how they've overcome certain trials and tribulations in their life to teach others how they can do it too.
She's got the setup. I saw behind the screen of her setup that she's got. She's got the voice, she's got the story, she's got the book. We've said it here, so now it's spoken, so she has to do it now.
Stay
But
tuned.
go give her some support over on her website. Follow her on social media. We'll have all the links in here, folks. That concludes this episode of the Shadows Podcast. See you next week.